Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech360.tv. I'm Bobby. It's our first review after the new year. We took it a few weeks off, went to CES. I didn't, Tim did, but I'm back. And I'm here to talk about cameras again because we got a camera with us that has really been a camera I've been wanting to test for the last couple months. Finally got my hands on it. It is the Fujifilm GFX 50R. First and foremost, before we get into the camera specs, I do want to talk a little bit about what medium format is. Now, technically, medium format is anything larger than 35mm, which is considered full frame. This sensor in this is what we call a cropped or an abbreviated medium format sensor, meaning that there are larger medium format sensors that companies like Phase 1 uses, Hasselblad uses for the H6D, and so forth. This uses a slightly smaller sensor, but again, much larger than full frame. Now, what does a larger sensor give you? Well, larger pixels. So even though this is 51.4 megapixels versus the 40 plus megapixels sensors on the full frame, the pixel size is larger. That gives you much more clarity, dynamic range, resolution, better in low light, and so forth. If you've never worn glasses before, but you know your eyes, you need them, but you're like, hey, I can still see, right? And then you put on a pair of prescription glasses that are made to your eyes and go, oh, wow, I see everything much more clear. That's what medium format is like. But there are some other differences which we'll get into throughout the review, but let's get to the camera. First and foremost, the GFX 50R is their second medium format from Fujifilm. The first one was the 50S, which has a more DSLR style body to it, which you can take off the EVF, you can put a couple different variations on that, and has a bigger grip. But the GFX 50S was a large camera for a lot of people out there, especially compared to the Hasselblad X1D, which really redefined size on medium format. Fujifilm doesn't like to rest on their laurels, so they came out with the 50R. R, I believe, stands for Rangefinder. If it's not the case, you can correct me on that in the comments below, because it has that X Pro 2 rangefinder body style to it. You do have some customizable buttons here, dials here near where the shutter button is. You've got your shutter speed dial here, exposure on that, and then if you move to the back of it, you've got a 3.2-inch LCD display, which swivel goes up and down. It's not fully articulate, but it does a pretty good job. Your EVF is a 3.6 million dot EVF, which is comparable to what you were seeing on other full-frame systems out there, so it's very clear, very sharp. No complaints on that at all. There's a lot of things you can customize in the Fujifilm system, which I like, but it can be overwhelming. So, like a lot of camera systems, sit down with a Fujifilm rep before if you get this camera, have them walk through some of the specs, watch other videos on YouTube. I'm not gonna go through what every button does. I don't have all day, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of things you can do with this camera. In terms of the ergonomics, it is pretty ergonomic. It feels good. It feels like a rangefinder. You have a little bit of a grip here. Depending on the size of lens you use, like I believe the 110 is the biggest lens you're gonna wanna use on this because it becomes very heavy. The body itself is not, I think it's 775 grams, but once you put a lens on like this, you're gonna feel the weight and it's gonna feel a little top heavy. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a solid camera. It feels great in the hand. I've heard some comments online that it feels plasticky. I mean, look, it's a durable camera and it feels like you can put it through its paces and you're not gonna worry about it too much. My favorite lens out of the entire Fujifilm lineup is the 110 f2, which I consider like a dream lens, especially medium format. It's great for portraiture, people shots, product shots. You get a nice depth of field. It's just beautiful bokeh. It's nice, smooth, and creamy on it. Great separation. I feel that the resolution is really good and it focuses pretty quick with the autofocus system on this. I also have the 45mm here, which is much smaller and more ideal for the 50R because this is more like a 35mm. This is more like an 85mm, where the 63 is like a 50mm. 51.4 megapixel sensor, ISO up to 102,000 plus. Autofocus points are on, it's contrast based, by the way, it's not phase detect. It has 117 points, but you can expand that up to 425 points. You have, I think 14, 15 stops dynamic range on this. You can do burst mode. I think it's 3 shots per second, so it's not the fastest camera on the market, but again, it's medium format, so you're not looking for speed. And you have your film modes. You've got those film modes. You know, the ones everyone talks about in Fujifilm, you've got them in here, Velvia, Provia, Chrome, which some people say mimics Kodachrome. You've got your Aquos for your black and whites. I mean, these film modes are beautiful, but they only work in JPEG. You can shoot in RAW, JPEG, and you can convert in TIFF inside of this as well. It does 1080p for HD, if I'm not mistaken, or HD video. but this is not a video camera, so take that out. No image stabilization in the body, but you do have it in some of the lenses out there. But one of the great things about this system over other medium format systems out there, the 50S and the 50R have it, is it has a mechanical shutter built into the body. And I'll tell you why that's important, especially if you want to adapt lens to this system. I'll tell you that later on in this review. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how it's like to use medium format and the numbers. Now, the 110 is comparable to about 80 to 85 millimeters, right? F2 is the fastest lens that Fujifilm makes for the GFX system. Now, F2 is around 1.7, 1.5, around that range. I mean, I don't have the exact calculations, but it's comparable to that. However, you need to know this. You cannot treat F2 like F2 on a full frame. For example, this is great for portraiture for one person. If you have more than one person in a shot and you want to get both of them in focus, F2 is not going to cut it. Where it could cut it with full frame, it will not cut it with medium format. You'll have one person's eye in focus, maybe a little bit of their nose, and then you start seeing the fall off, and the other person's just going to be a little bit of a blur. You'll find that the 45 f2.8 here is a much more street-friendly lens. It's about 35 millimeters, and that's around an f2 for full frame. You'll find that, but you do need to also know about that aperture. That will throw you off a little bit, but this is a really good lens as well. But the GF mount lenses that Fujifilm makes for this system are beautiful. Build quality is fantastic. Image quality is great. I can't say enough about these lenses. And I like the ability to adapt lenses on this camera. Because like I mentioned before, earlier in this review, you can adapt lenses. Let's say a Leica mount lens. Now I don't have a Leica lens here, I have a Voigtlander 51.2. And I actually bought an adapter for this review, which is kind of funny because I bought it out of my own money to shoot a review for a camera I'm giving back. But nonetheless, I wanted to give something to you as the viewer, an idea of how it works. But I will tell you, it works very well, especially manual focus with focus peaking and focus zoom. You can get some really good images, but you will get some vignetting, of course, because this is a smaller lens than a medium format. Look at the size of it, look at the back of this lens versus the sensor size of this camera. There's gonna be some vignetting, correctable, but you will get it. But the image quality, oh, beautiful. And because this has a mechanical shutter inside of it and an electronic shutter, I'm able to use this lens adapted to it at its full capability. And that means you can also put a Canon lenses on this, Nikon lenses, whatever lenses that are out there that you can use with mechanical shutter in your camera. You can use on this as long as there's an adapter made for it. But you're probably thinking, okay, Bobby, you love this camera so much. What are things you don't like about it? And that's the thing, there's not a lot I don't like about it. But I would say ergonomics wise, I like the rangefinder system, but I think if you're using like a lens like the 110 or anything larger than that, you're gonna find it's a bit top heavy. I do wish I could do some slightly faster burst modes. I know again, it's medium format and it's slower, but it would be nice to at least get to 5 frames per second or 6, just to kind of keep me a little happier if I wanna shoot some action. Not the end of the world, but it is. The autofocusing is good when there's good light. When it's low light, you will find it challenging, so you're gonna have to work with that a little bit. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I wouldn't mind cosmetically if it actually came in silver and black. I think that'd be kind of cool, actually. I mean, the all black thing is nice, but I feel like the silver and black would give it a much more, maybe a more luxurious look to it. That's pretty much it. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoy using the GFX 50R. But now we need to talk about the thing that really separates this camera over any other medium format system out there in the market, and that's price. Now in Singapore, retail is right around 7,000. I think it's 6,000 plus, 6,800 or 900, okay? It varies depending on the shop you go to and the promotions that are out there. And I know that they had over the holiday season promotions where you could get the 63 millimeter lens for like a few $100 top up and you're good to go. So for 7,000 plus Singapore dollars, you had yourself a GFX 50R medium format with a 63 millimeter f2.8 lens. That's not bad. Now this is not a cheap camera. It's still 7,000 plus Singapore dollars. I mean, come on, with a lens. I mean, that's a lot of money. But compared to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 that you would usually pay for a medium format system out there, this is really a game changer. And I really think what Fujifilm has done it's completely changed how consumers will look at medium format. And the fact that I can adapt lenses like an L-mount lens or a Canon EF system lens or a Nikon lens, I mean, I can put lenses on this system and still obtain that optimal image quality. I mean, that's amazing. So that's my thoughts on the GFX 50R. Leave your comments, suggestions below. I respond to your comments, so leave me your thoughts. If you're a user of the GFX 50R, what do you think? For those who are looking to get in a medium format, hit me up with any questions. I'll be glad to answer them for you. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. We love subscribers. Subscribe to us. Follow us on Facebook. Until the next one, take care.